The airplane you're looking at right now is in the middle of preparing for an emergency landing. Emergency, although it appears to be a normal flight. Shortly after takeoff, the front landing gear got stuck inside the nose compartment and could not be deployed. In that emergency situation, passengers were instructed to move. In order to minimize impact in case of a collision at Hangzhou Airport's runway in Shanghai. As a precaution in case the plane caught fire upon landing, although in the cockpit were highly experienced pilots, this was their very first time facing such a challenging situation like this. The question is, can this aircraft land safely without its front landing gear? Today, I will tell you the story of the emergency landing of Flight 5, operated by China Eastern Airlines, on September 10, 1998. After many days of scorching heat, light rain finally began to fall in Shanghai. In the early evening, 120 passengers were preparing to board Flight 586, departing from Shanghai to Beijing. The aircraft for this flight was an MD-11 with the registration number B-2173, temporarily reassigned after completing a route from Los Angeles to Shanghai. Captain Ng Xi Jie-Tiang, who was 53 at the time, after finishing the external aircraft inspection, returned to the cockpit to begin pre-flight preparations. Was a flight instructor with over 30 years of experience. He was accompanied by First Officer Yin Baodai, Flight Engineer Zhao Yongliang, and co-pilot and communications officer Mr. Liu on this flight mission. This MD-11 aircraft was developed and manufactured by McDonnell Douglas as an evolution of the DC-10. It was based on the DC-10 design. Compared to its predecessor, the fuselage and wingspan were extended, and it was equipped with next-generation engines and an advanced glass cockpit, which offered significant improvements in performance and technology. Despite its unique look with 3 engines, the MD-11 failed to achieve strong sales in the international market at the time. However, during the 1990s, it served as the main long-haul aircraft for China Eastern Airlines and played a role in the rapid growth of China's civil aviation industry. That evening, the aircraft taxied onto the runway 18 at Shanghai Hangzhou Airport. After the crew completed their pre-flight checklist, before takeoff, they received clearance from air traffic control to take off. Hangzhou Tower, China Eastern 586. Ground wind 110 degrees, speed 11 miles per hour. Cleared for takeoff on runway 18. First officer confirmed. Runway 18 cleared for takeoff, China Eastern 586. Immediately after, the captain slowly pushed the throttle forward, propelling the aircraft, weighing nearly 4 as the landing gear was retracted. At 7:38 p.m., Flight 586 officially took off from Hangzhou. However, shortly after the crew retracted the gear, Ho Fat Hien, Dao Hu Bat Thuong, Trong Kai Ba Boat Song Chin, Du Bao Hu De Thursday Gon Tan Song, Ti Den Bao Quat Song Mui Lai Sang Du, Dao Hu Cho Thay, Song Mui Chua Duok Thursday Gon Va Qua Dung Catch, Kai Mai Bei Leo Len Du Chao Koang 900M, Va Chiyan Sang, Trang Tai Bang Gang, Tabai Kim Tra Bang, Ju Keen Trung Tom, Fat Hien Tren Trang, Trang Tai Kung Hien Ti Rang, Song Mui Chua Duok Thursday Gon Dung Catch, Ban Dao Ho Cho Rang Den, Kan Bao By Loi Ky Thuet, Nunda Thursday Ha, Song Suong Roy Thursday Lai, Hai Vong He Thong Se Koi Phuc Ben Thuong, Qua That Kite Song Duok The Suong, For Den Zin Bao Trang Tai Ben Thuong Du Sang. They In Hung Kai Teep Tuc Thursday Song Lai, Den Du Bao Loit Song Mui Ven Teep Tuc Sang, Truoc Tin Hung Du, Ko Fo, The Lin He Voi Kim So Kong Lu, Sin Bei Hong Kio, Da Xian Fep Quay Dao Vi Ha Can. Sao Kainan Duok Su Cho Fep Tu Mat Dat, Tabai Tien Han Them Mot Lon Thursday Nium Ha Thursday Song, Tai Nin Den Bao Song Mui Ven Kong Thay Doi, Teep Tuc, O Trang Tai Bao Loi, Mac Du La Mot Ko, Truong Dai Dan Kin Nium, Ong Ne Gioi Tuong Kung Lon Dao Tien, Trong Su Ing Geep Gap Phi Mot Tin Hong, Tro Tru Nu Vei, Truoc Noi Ko Gate Song Ro Rong, Tabai Lap Tuc Chuyen Sang Qui Trin Con Cap, Su Dung He Thong Hot Song Du Fong, De Thursday Emot Song Bang Te, Sao Kai Hon Tat Tao Tok, Kakt Song Chin Duok The Ra Ben Thuong, Tai Nin Song Mui Ven Kong Huck Nich, Teep tuc trong trang tai, by Thursday gone. Du trong buong lai. Fight sung chi ko the dua veo bang jukin. Dazak din trang tai quat song. Nen ko trong quiet din tuk hien bei thap. Ngang quad duong bang. Danan veen mat. Dat ko the quan sat truck teep. Bang mat thuong. Da dam bao and tone. Mai bei. Lon dao tien bang gang duong bang. O du chow koang 300m. Tai nin du troi de toi. Tam nin by han che. Nun nan veen mat. Dat kong the quan sat ro trang tai. Song mui. Sao tu lon bei Thursday kong hu qua. To bei yu bo try. Nen veen quan sat truck teep tai dao duong bang. Lon nai ko truong ju keen mai bei ha suong du chow. Chi koang 30m so voi mat dat. No du. Nen veen mat dat koi kung kung nin ro trang tai. Song va zak nen chik chan rang. Song mui van chua duok ha suong. Nai kai nen duok bout sao con cap. Ve su ko qua chien bei. China Eastern 586. Qing Guin Tan Fo Thuong Hai. Do in Han Chong Trian Kai Luke Luong Ung Q. Hui Dong 350 Lin Vu Trang. 59 XEQ Hoa Kung 20 XEQ Thuong Toi Hien Truong. The Sansong Doi Fo Voi Muat and Hung Ko the Zara. San Bei Hong Kio. Lap Tuc Tam Ngung Ton Bo Kak Chien Bei Diva Den. Dong Doi Cho Kak Mai Bei Kok Bei Vong Cho Tren Kong. In Hung Utien Tuet Doi. Cho Chien Bei Dang Gap Su Ko. Luke Nai. Utien Hong Dao La Tim Moi Catch Da Ha Duok Song. Mui Kai Mai Bei Con Dang Tren Kong. Nu Kong the Hot Song. Mai Bei Se Mat DM Tua Quan Trong Kai Teep Dat. Dan Den Mat Ka Nong Kim Sot Hung Lan. And its basic support capability. At the same time, direct friction between the fuselage and runway surface could generate sparks that might trigger a fire or explosion, posing a serious threat to both crew and ground staff. This was truly the most dangerous emergency situation they had ever faced. After consulting the technical manual of the aircraft, the crew attempted the gravity drop method to release the gear, but the nose gear remained completely unresponsive. With no viable options left, the crew discussed with ground control, and Captain Ng decided to attempt a high-load maneuver, using G-forces, to try and swing the gear out of its compartment. During these test flights, the aircraft was pushed to high speeds, banked aggressively, and made sharp turns, all in hopes of generating enough inertia for the nose gear to pop out. Yet every attempt failed. The nose gear remained jammed in its bay, with no signs at all that it would release. At this point, with no remaining method to deploy the gear midair, the crew made a bold decision to attempt a landing without the nose gear, hoping that the strong impact upon landing might generate enough force to jar the nose gear loose. This type of landing without nose gear posed an enormous challenge for the flight crew. They had to control the impact force upon touchdown to avoid exceeding safety limits, while also ensuring the aircraft hit the ground under high G-forces, enough to force the nose gear out of its bay. What's notable is that no simulator training course had ever prepared them for a scenario this specific and unusual, nor were there practical guidelines available for carrying out such unconventional procedures in a safe manner. The crew attempted 2 landing trials, but both were unsuccessful. During more than an hour of circling in the air, the crew and the ground technical team tried every solution they could think of. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation, the crew sent flight engineer Zhao Yongliang, who had deep knowledge of the aircraft structure, to take the risk of entering the nose gear compartment to manually deploy the gear. After strapping himself in with a nylon safety line designed for emergency evacuation, Engineer Zhao opened the avionics hatch near the aircraft's nose section to inspect the gear. Through direct observation, he discovered that the nose gear was still almost fully retracted, while the compartment door only opened about 12 inches, leaving extremely limited space. Despite the risk of being pulled out by pressure differential, Engineer Zhao daringly used the onboard emergency axe on the plane to strike the wheel forcefully in an attempt to trigger the release mechanism, but the nose gear still showed no response. At that point, with fuel running low, and after consulting with the coordination center on the ground, the crew had no choice but to proceed with an emergency landing at Hangzhou Airport, where the fire brigade had been on standby for hours, and sprayed a 1,640-foot-long and 100-foot-wide layer of fire-retardant foam onto the runway to reduce friction between the fuselage and the tarmac, thereby minimizing the risk of and fire during touchdown. At 10:58 p.m., the aircraft had only 5,500 pounds of fuel left, forcing it to approach the radio landing guidance system. On runway 18, Captain Ng Xi Jie-Tiang took over as the primary pilot, while First Officer Yin Baodai assisted with speed regulation and thrust control. To maintain the aircraft's center of gravity, all 120 passengers were instructed to move to the rear cabin as a counterbalance for the missing nose gear. In this high-stakes moment, the captain had to not only guide the aircraft through a precise descent, but also time the moment perfectly to lower the nose onto the runway as gently as possible, aiming exactly at the section of runway pre-covered in foam. At 11:07 p.m., after the flight attendant's impact readiness command, Captain Ng Xi Jie-Tiang successfully guided the aircraft with no nose gear to land precisely on runway 18 at Hangzhou Airport, a miracle in the history of Chinese aviation. As soon as the main landing gear touched down, Captain Ng Xi Jie-Tiang immediately activated the reverse thrust system, reverse thrust, while pulling the control column back to keep the plane in a steady landing posture. Once the speed dropped to a safe level, he carefully adjusted the yoke to gently lower the nose onto the runway, a maneuver requiring near-perfect precision under the condition of having no nose gear. At the very moment the nose touched the ground, flight engineer Zhao Yongliang pulled the fire suppression lever, cutting off all fuel supply to the engines to prevent any sparks from the fuselage rubbing against the tarmac from reaching. Thanks to this, the risk of a fire or explosion was eliminated. After touchdown, the MD-11 continued to skid along the runway for about 1,250 feet before coming to a complete stop on runway 18 at Hangzhou Airport. Immediately, dozens of fire trucks rushed into position and sprayed foam continuously on the fuselage to prevent any possible fire that might ignite after the impact. At that moment, the flight crew immediately activated the emergency evacuation procedures. During the evacuation, the left slide at door 3 was torn by a sharp object, causing deflation, resulting in minor injuries to 6 passengers and 3 flight attendants. However, the remaining 128 people, thanks to the fire retardant foam, no explosion occurred, thus avoiding any major secondary damage. All of this was only made possible by the seamless coordination and decisive actions between the flight crew in the air and the teams on the ground, marking a remarkably successful emergency landing, beyond expectations for Flight 586. However, even after such a miracle, one big question remained. Why did the nose gear fail to deploy? Despite every method being tried, the subsequent investigation revealed that the root cause lay in a detail, seemingly very small. During the first retraction of the nose gear, just after takeoff, a bolt approximately 6 inches in length, with serial number ACG 7161501, had fallen out of the locking mechanism. It was this tiny bolt that caused the locking linkage of the nose gear to jam in a nearly fully retracted position, rendering the for deploying and retracting the nose gear useless. As a result, even though the crew tried using the main hydraulic system or switched to the gravity drop emergency backup system, the nose gear still failed to deploy. The Civil Aviation Administration of China then mobilized a large task force and even called on local residents around the airport to join a search campaign for this critical missing bolt. However, despite all efforts, the bolt was never found, leaving behind an unsolved mystery. But at the same time, it highlighted the absolute importance of every small component on an aircraft. To verify why the bolt had failed, the investigation team removed a bolt with the same serial number ACG 7161501 from another aircraft of the same model, with registration number 2174, for material analysis and quality testing. The results showed that the quality of the bolt did not meet the required standards for materials used in Chinese civil aviation steel structures. Specifically, the broken bolt that fell from the nose gear was likely defective due to a metallurgical flaw that compromised its strength under real-world operating conditions. In fact, this incident marked the first time in China a civil aircraft successfully carried out an emergency landing under the condition of having no nose gear. This success was not only the result of the pilot's skill and personal ability, but also the outcome of seamless coordination and professionalism between the crew and all ground personnel, which helped minimize damage to the lowest possible level. It was the tireless, unsung workers, diligent and courageous, from cockpit to firefighters, technicians, and coordinators, who made the miracle of this safe landing possible, turning a potentially disastrous accident into a textbook case in aviation history. The aircraft involved in the incident was later successfully repaired and converted into a cargo aircraft 2 years later, continuing a new journey with China Cargo Airlines, a Chinese carrier. On February 27, 2005, Captain Ng Xi Jie-Tiang, the quiet hero of Flight 586, once again piloted that very same MD-11 cargo plane, safely landing it at Shanghai Pudong Airport. It was also the final flight in his 44-year-long aviation career, a man who devoted his entire life to the skies, leaving behind a legacy that will forever be remembered in Chinese aviation history.